All right, let's dive into a pretty wild thought experiment today. What if our entire reality, everything we see, feel, and know, is actually just an incredibly advanced game? Now, I know it sounds like something straight out of a sci fi movie, but we're going to break down a philosophical model for how this could all work, and it's surprisingly solid.
So, this is our starting point, our core assumption for this entire exploration. It's a massive statement, for sure, but instead of just dismissing it, let's actually take it seriously for a few minutes. Let's treat it like a real framework and see how well it holds up when we use it to look at the world we live in.
Okay, so just to be super clear here, the goal isn't to prove or disprove this theory. We are not looking for glitches in the matrix or trying to find cheat codes. Nope. What we're doing is treating this as a complete philosophical model and really just testing the logic of the idea itself.
We're basically flipping the question. Instead of asking, is it true? We're going to ask, does it work as a system? Does this whole game universe idea give us consistent answers for some of life's biggest mysteries? Can it actually function as a complete framework for reality? That's the real question we're digging into.
Every good game has rules, right? And this one is no different. The theory is really built on 6 core pillars that give it all its structure and logic. So let's break them down.
Okay, so here's the blueprint. First up, the universe isn't just some random accident. It's an engineered system. It was designed. Second, the designers, this higher society, they exist outside of our reality. Third, and this is a huge one, we are the avatars. We're the characters in the game, and our consciousness is the player at the controls. Fourth, our whole wake-sleep cycle, that just reflects when the player is active or taking a break. Fifth, we do have some free will, but it's not absolute. There are rules and constraints. And finally, death isn't the end, it's just the termination of that specific game session. See, it's a complete system. And you know what's really interesting is that while all this language about games and simulations feels very, very modern, the core idea behind it is anything but new. You could almost say it's just a high-tech version of some of the oldest questions humanity has ever asked about what's real.
I mean, think all the way back to ancient Greece, Plato's allegory of the cave. It proposed that the reality we see is just like shadows dancing on a cave wall, a blurry copy of a much truer higher realm. While the game universe model is basically a modern update on that. Our universe is just a really, really high-fidelity simulation of that higher reality.
And it's not just a Western idea either. Over in Eastern philosophy, especially in Vedanta, you have this concept of Leela. The idea is that the whole universe is a form of divine cosmic play. It's not some serious, rigid creation. It's more like a joyful, spontaneous dance. The game universe theory just reframes that cosmic play into terms we understand today, an advanced immersive game. Which brings us right up to the present day. You've probably heard of Nick Bostrom's simulation hypothesis, right? The argument that, statistically speaking, it's pretty likely we're all living inside a computer simulation. Well, the game universe theory takes that idea one critical step further. It says, yes, it's a simulation, but it's not just running on autopilot. There are active players, conscious beings from that higher reality, controlling avatars like us. All right, so the model has some pretty deep historical roots. But how well does it actually explain our day-to-day experience? Let's stress test it a bit against two of the most universal and, honestly, most mysterious parts of being human: the whole deal with sleep and that big paradox of free will. Think about sleep for a second. It's kind of weird, right? Our conscious story just stops. Our sense of time completely vanishes, but our bodies just keep on going, breathing, healing, doing their thing. This model offers a surprisingly clean explanation. When we're awake, the player is at the controls, actively playing the game. When we sleep, the player has logged off for the night, and our bodies just switch over to a kind of background automation, like an idle character in a video game. Okay, this is where the model gets brilliant, especially with free will. We all feel like we make our own choices, day in and day out. But sometimes, doesn't life feel scripted, or at least guided? Well, think of it like a huge open-world video game. You have local agency, you can roam anywhere, do what you want, but the game also has global constraints. There's a main quest, there are rules to the world. This model suggests that what we call fate, or intuition, or even just dumb luck, is really just the game's subtle way of nudging us along a path that was already designed.
So far, this model is looking surprisingly robust. But to be intellectually honest, we have to tackle its biggest challenge head-on. Every theory has a weak point, and for this one, it's a really profound and difficult question.
And here it is. Why would any advanced society design a game that includes so much suffering, so much ignorance and inequality? If this is all supposed to be a game, why is it so often incredibly painful and deeply unfair? This is, without a doubt, the strongest criticism of the whole idea.
Now, the framework does try to offer some possible answers, though you might not find them totally satisfying. Maybe the whole point is high-stakes realism. Maybe overcoming moral difficulty is the main objective of the game. Perhaps the players voluntarily sign up to enter a game with all these tough constraints, and the memory wipe we get at the start is just necessary for real immersion. I mean, it's the same reason we choose to play difficult, challenging games. But admittedly, this is the hardest part of the model to really come to terms with.
So where does all this leave us? We've taken apart the rules, we've traced its history, we've even poked at its biggest flaw. Now it's time to ask the most important question of all. What does any of this mean for us, right here, right now? Because here's the key takeaway. Even if this model were 100% true, it doesn't make our lives meaningless. Not at all. Our experienced reality is our reality. The choices you make have real consequences inside the game. The love you feel is absolutely real. The suffering you endure genuinely hurts. In fact, you could even argue that thinking of yourself as an avatar for another consciousness might actually increase your sense of responsibility to play this game with purpose and with integrity. So ultimately, the point isn't really about whether life is actually a game. The model is just a lens, a different way of looking at things. And when you look through that lens, you realize the most important question isn't, is any of this real? It's a question about your character, about your actions, and about your impact on all the other players in the game. The real question becomes, what kind of player are you choosing to be?